The Vraxian hunting collective, known as the Crimson Talons, had built their reputation across 17 star systems on one simple principle. If it moved, they could track it, corner it, and mount its head on a wall. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Krell-Vox, had personally brought down a Mytharian storm whale using nothing but a ceremonial blade and what he described as pure intimidation. His second-in-command, Zara, once strangled a phase serpent with her bare secondary arms. The third member, Quinn, had eaten a still-living crater beast's heart to absorb its strength, which mostly just gave him indigestion, but made for an excellent story at taverns. These were not individuals who understood the concept of humility. They wore their kills like badges, their scars like medals, and their egos like particularly ostentatious hats that somehow never fell off, despite having no actual structural support. So when the Galactic Wilderness Preservation Committee issued a routine notice that the planet designated as Terra remained under observation status with limited contact protocols, the Crimson Talons saw not a warning but an invitation. A challenge, even. After all, the dominant species there was classified as a Type 2 soft-skin biped with minimal natural defenses, no venomous capabilities, and laughably insufficient sensory organs. The planet itself boasted nothing more threatening than some large carnivores that couldn't even achieve supersonic speeds, and plant life that mostly just sat there being green. A vacation, Krell-Vox had announced, his mandibles clicking with amusement. We will hunt something quaint and primitive, return with exotic trophies, and remind the galaxy why the Crimson Talons remain unmatched. The fact that 73% of species who visited Terra without proper authorization ended up filing incident reports should have been their first clue. The fact that the planet's tourism board had an entire department dedicated to unfortunate extraterrestrial situations should have been their second. But the Crimson Talons had not achieved their reputation by paying attention to statistics, safety guidelines, or common sense. They landed their stealth pod in what their scanners identified as a low population density zone with abundant wildlife. The humans apparently called it the Pacific Northwest, which sounded appropriately primitive and vaguely mystical. The forest stretched before them like a green cathedral, trees reaching heights that seemed structurally improbable, the air thick with moisture, and the scent of decomposing plant matter that Zara immediately identified as atmospheric flavor. Remember, Krell-Vox addressed his team as they checked their weapons. We are apex predators entering the territory of a species that still uses combustion engines and believes in elected leadership. Maintain your dignity. Project dominance. Do not eat anything that glows unless you confirm it is supposed to glow. That last rule had been implemented after the crater beast incident. They strode into the forest with the confidence of beings who had never encountered a concept they couldn't intimidate or stab. Their armor gleamed with advanced polymers that could deflect plasma fire. Their weapons hummed with enough power to vaporize small vehicles. Their tracking equipment could detect a heartbeat from 3 kilometers away and identify species by their metabolic signatures. The equipment lasted approximately 47 minutes before it started displaying error messages in languages none of them recognized. Unusual, Quinn muttered, tapping his wrist display as it flickered between showing their location, showing a recipe for something called banana bread, and showing what appeared to be a cartoon drawing of a small Earth creature, giving them a middle appendage. The magnetic interference here is beyond calculated parameters. Recalibrate, Krell-Vox ordered, because that is what leaders say when they do not actually understand the technical problem but want to appear decisive. Quinn recalibrated. The device began playing music. Specifically, It began playing what the Terran database would identify as "Never Gonna Give You Up" by Rick Astley, which suggested that Earth's magnetic fields had a sense of humor and spite in equal measure. "We navigate by traditional methods," Zara announced, pulling out an honest-to-stars compass that immediately spun in circles before pointing directly down, which was either very wrong or very concerning, depending on one's interpretation of gravitational theory. This should have been the moment they called for extraction. This should have been the moment they reconsidered their life choices. Instead, Krelvox made the pronouncement that would later be studied in xenopsychology courses as a prime example of how pride overrides survival instinct. "We are the Crimson Talons. We do not need technology to conquer a primitive forest." The forest, as it turned out, had opinions about that statement. The first opinion manifested as a creature the Terran database called a raccoon, which looked like someone had combined a small bear with a burglar's mask and given it the moral compass of a black market weapons dealer. It emerged from a hollow log, assessed the three armed aliens, and promptly stole Quinn's ration pack while maintaining eye contact the entire time. Did that small mammal just commit theft?" Zara asked, her voice caught between outrage and admiration. "It is of no consequence," Krelvox declared. "We will hunt fresh meat." The second opinion came from something called a skunk, which Krelvox attempted to hunt because it appeared slow, docile, and approximately the right size for a light snack. The creature responded to his aggressive approach by turning around, raising its tail, and deploying a chemical defense mechanism that would later be described in the incident report as a war crime in aerosol form. For the next 2 hours, the mighty Crimson Talons stumbled through the forest smelling like they had personally offended every sensory organ in the galaxy, making sounds that ranged from distressed wail to malfunctioning garbage disposal. Small Earth creatures fled before them, but not out of fear, more out of olfactory self-preservation. "We shall bathe in the stream," Krelvox announced, locating running water with the kind of desperate determination usually reserved for finding oxygen after a hull breach. The stream was occupied by something the locals called a river otter, which looked at the three aliens approaching the water, looked at its family, and made a decision that could only be described as choosing violence. River otters, as it turns out, are adorable packages of fury and teeth, who view their territory with the same reverence a dragon views its hoard. The battle was brief, humiliating, and ended with the Crimson Talons retreating from a 12-pound mammal that chittered at them with what could only be interpreted as laughter. "Regroup," Krelvox ordered, his dignity in tatters, his armor covered in mud, his smell competing with local waste treatment facilities. "We establish camp and resume hunting at dawn." Except they could not find their camp, or rather, they could not find where they had left their supplies, because the forest had somehow rearranged itself when they were not looking, or they had gotten turned around, or possibly the trees had just decided to mess with them, because Earth's ecosystem apparently operated on chaos theory and spite. They walked, and walked, and walked some more. The trees all looked identical. Every clearing seemed familiar yet wrong. Their tracking equipment continued playing what they would later learn was humanity's comprehensive collection of meme songs. At one point, Zara swore she saw the same distinctive rock formation 3 times, which should have been impossible unless the rock was following them, which on Earth seemed entirely plausible. Night fell with the casual indifference of a universe that did not care about the Crimson Talons' mounting list of indignities. The temperature dropped. The sounds of the forest shifted to include hoots, howls, and strange calls that their translator kept interpreting as probably aggressive, or definitely mocking, or unclear but unsettling. "We are simply experiencing a minor navigational challenge," Krelvox announced to his team. who were too tired to argue and too proud to admit that they, the legendary Crimson Talons, were completely and thoroughly lost. Day 2 began with rain, not the gentle precipitation of their home worlds, but the kind of relentless downpour that suggested the sky had taken their presence as a personal insult. Their advanced armor kept them dry, but could not prevent the general misery of trudging through mud, while small earth creatures watched from the trees with what appeared to be judgmental expressions. "The pod must be nearby," Quinn insisted, checking his malfunctioning scanner for the 800th time. "The emergency beacon should be somewhere, in some direction, theoretically." They were debating whether to try walking north or what they hoped was north when they heard it, the sound of something large moving through the forest with purposeful intent. Finally, Krell-Vox thought, a worthy opponent, something they could fight, defeat, and restore their warrior dignity. What emerged from the tree line was not a predator. It was a human male, approximately 6 feet tall, wearing what appeared to be weather-appropriate outdoor clothing, carrying a backpack and holding a walking stick. He stopped when he saw them, his eyes widening slightly before settling into an expression that could only be described as concerned resignation. "Oh boy," the human said, which their translators rendered as "oh boy," leaving the aliens to wonder if this was a greeting, a threat, or a philosophical statement. "You folks look lost." The Crimson Talons drew themselves up to full height. Krell-Vox activated his most intimidating posture, the one that made his spine plates extend and his shoulder guards flare outward. "We are the Crimson Talons, renowned hunters from the Vraxian Confederacy. We do not get lost. We are temporarily geographically uncertain." The human's mouth twitched in what might have been suppressed amusement. He adjusted his backpack and gave them the kind of look someone gives to tourists who have just asked how to get to a landmark they are currently standing in front of. "Aha. And how long have you been temporarily geographically uncertain?" "That is irrelevant," Jara snapped, though her stomach chose that moment to growl with a sound like a small fusion reactor cycling down. "We require no assistance from a soft-skinned prey species." "Right," the human said slowly, his eyes scanning their mud-covered armor, their dejected postures, and their general air of beings who had been thoroughly humbled by nature. "Look, I'm Marcus. I'm a park ranger, which means it is literally my job to help people who are lost in the forest. Even if those people are not technically people. You know what I mean. How long since you've eaten?" "We are warriors," Krell-Vox declared. "We can survive for 2 days," Quinn interrupted, because he had priorities, and his dignity was not one of them at this moment. "We have not eaten in 2 days. Our supplies were misplaced." Marcus's expression shifted from amused to genuinely concerned. "Okay, that changes things. And I'm guessing your communication equipment isn't working either." At their sullen silence, he sighed. "Yeah, that happens here. Something about the mineral deposits and the general Pacific Northwest vibe messes with alien tech. Happens more than you'd think. Stay here. I'm going to make a call." He pulled out a primitive communication device that somehow worked perfectly, speaking into it with the casual efficiency of someone who had done this before. "Hey Jen, yeah, it's Marcus. Got 3 more in Sector 7. Vraxians, I think. Look hungry and like they've been through the ringer." No, they seem peaceful. Just lost, and probably embarrassed." "Yeah, I'm thinking we do the feeding station setup." "Cool, I'll get started." "Feeding station," Krell-Vox repeated slowly, the words triggering alarm bells in his mind that his stomach immediately overruled. "Don't worry about it," Marcus said with a smile that was both friendly and deeply ominous. I'm going to get you sorted out. But first we need to set up camp. Well, I'm going to set up camp. You three should probably just sit. Rest. Maybe don't touch anything. What followed was a masterclass in efficiency that left the Crimson Talons both impressed and vaguely insulted. Marcus moved through the forest like someone who had memorized every root and rock. He selected a spot near their current location, assessed the trees with a critical eye, and then began to climb with a speed and grace that should not have been possible for a species with such limited grip strength. "What is he doing?" Jara whispered, as Marcus ascended a massive Douglas fir with nothing but rope and determination. "I believe," Quinn said slowly, "he is building something in the trees." He was indeed building something in the trees. Specifically, Marcus was constructing what could only be described as an elevated platform system using rope, pulleys, wooden planks that he produced from his impossibly spacious backpack, and what appeared to be nothing but pure spite directed at gravity. Within an hour, he had created a stable platform about 20 feet off the ground, complete with a rain cover and a small cooking area. "Behold," Marcus called down cheerfully, "the feeding station. We are not animals to be fed." Krelvox shouted back, his pride making one final desperate stand. "Course not," Marcus agreed, far too agreeably. "But you are lost, hungry, and your equipment doesn't work. So until we can get you extracted, and trust me, that's going to take a few days because your ship is parked in a restricted zone and there's paperwork, you need to eat. Now I could walk you to the nearest ranger station, but that's 2 days hike, and you look like you'd collapse halfway there. Or I can set up a nice comfortable dining arrangement, where you stay put, I bring you food, and we all avoid an interstellar incident." The logic was sound. The presentation was humiliating. Krelvox's stomach made the executive decision for his brain. "We will accept your assistance. Temporarily." "Great," Marcus said, and his enthusiasm was somehow more crushing than mockery would have been. "Now let me tell you about the menu." Over the next hour, more humans arrived. They came with supplies, with curiosity, and with the kind of organized efficiency that suggested this was not their first time rescuing lost aliens. A woman named Jen brought a portable stove and several containers of pre-prepared food. A man called Carlos arrived with more rope, additional platforms, and what he described as enrichment activities, which Quinn suspected was terminology used for zoo animals, but decided not to comment on. "We're setting up a 3-station system," Jen explained to Marcus while the Crimson Talons watched from the ground with growing horror. "Station 1 for meal prep, Station 2 for storage, and Station 3 as a weather backup. I brought the good pulleys this time." "You thinking standard 3-meal schedule?" Carlos asked, hammering a support beam into place with disturbing expertise. "Yeah, breakfast at 8, lunch at 1, dinner at 6. Keep them on a routine while we process the paperwork with the Galactic Oversight Committee." "We can hear you," Jara pointed out weakly. "Oh, we know," Jen called down cheerfully. "We're just coordinating, making sure you're comfortable. You folks have any dietary restrictions we should know about?" The surreal nature of apex predators being asked about dietary restrictions by their prey species was not lost on any of the Crimson Talons. Krelvox opened his mouth to deliver a scathing response, but Quinn cut him off with admirable practicality. "We can metabolize most carbon-based proteins, high caloric content preferred. Nothing with crystalline structures." "Got it. No rock candy for the aliens," Carlos said, making a note on his data pad. By evening, the tree kitchen system was complete. It was, objectively speaking, an impressive feat of engineering. 3 platforms connected by rope bridges and pulley systems, each covered with waterproof tarps and equipped with storage containers. Marcus had even installed small LED lights powered by solar batteries, giving the whole arrangement a cozy ambiance that absolutely no self-respecting warrior species should have found comforting. But they were hungry, so very, very hungry. The first meal arrived via pulley system at precisely 6 o'clock, lowered in a basket with a handwritten note that said, "Dinner is served," complete with a small smiley face. Inside were containers of something Marcus called chili, bread that was still warm, fruit that looked exotic but tasted sweet, and bottles of water that were somehow colder than the ambient temperature suggested they should be. "We should refuse this on principle," Krelvox said, staring at the food. "Absolutely," Jara agreed, already opening a container. "It would be dishonorable to accept," Quinn added, shoving bread into his mouth. The chili was, objectively speaking, the best thing any of them had ever tasted. Whether this was due to its actual quality, or the fact that they had not eaten in 48 hours while being humbled by every aspect of Earth's ecosystem, remained a subject of debate. But as they sat under the forest canopy, eating food delivered by a species they had come to hunt, the irony was not lost on them. "From above," Jara said quietly. "They feed us from above." "The predator positions," Krelvox acknowledged, because there was no denying it. The humans had taken the high ground, the strategic advantage, the position of power, not through violence but through relentless practical kindness. The next morning, breakfast arrived at 8 o'clock sharp. Eggs, some kind of meat strips Marcus called bacon, bread, and a hot beverage that smelled like violence but tasted like civilization. Marcus descended from the platform with a clipboard, looking like someone conducting a welfare check at a zoo. "How did everyone sleep? Any discomfort? The temperature okay? Why are you doing this?" Krelvox asked, his voice carrying genuine confusion. "We came to your planet without authorization. We intended to hunt. We are technically invaders." Marcus sat on a fallen log, considering his answer carefully. "Well, yeah, but you're also lost, confused, and pretty clearly out of your depth. Look, you're not the first aliens to wander into these woods thinking Earth is some kind of easy target. Most of you are apex predators on your home worlds, used to being the toughest things around. Then you get here and realize that Earth's ecosystem is what happens when evolution gets bored and decides to make everything either weirdly resilient, surprisingly aggressive, or just plain weird. Your planet is insane," Quinn said with feeling. "Yeah," Marcus agreed cheerfully. "But it's our insane planet. And part of living here means you learn to help folks who are in over their heads, even if those folks are 7-foot-tall aliens with more teeth than seems strictly necessary. Besides," he added with a grin, "the look on your faces when you saw the tree kitchen was absolutely priceless." Jen got photos. Over the following days, a routine established itself. Meals arrived with punctual reliability. The humans rotated shifts, always someone nearby but respectfully distant. They brought books about Earth's ecosystem, which the Crimson Talons read with growing horror. They brought games which were politely declined until boredom overrode dignity. They brought conversation, sharing stories about other rescue operations that made the Crimson Talons feel both better and worse about their situation. There was this Keltorian diplomat, Jen told them on day 3, sitting at the base of the tree while they ate lunch above. Came here for a formal visit, decided to go on what he called a casual nature walk. We found him 2 days later, up a tree, surrounded by a family of deer that he was convinced were predators preparing to attack. "Deer are prey animals," Jara said. "Yeah, but they're also big, have pointy antlers, and really don't like it when you run screaming through their territory." Poor guy had to be talked down by 3 rangers and a wildlife expert. He filed a complaint about Earth's deceptively weaponized herbivores. Despite themselves, the Crimson Talons began to relax. The food was good, the shelter was effective, the humans were not what they expected. There was no gloating, no mockery, just earnest helpfulness delivered with the kind of matter-of-fact competence that somehow felt worse than outright triumph would have been. On day 4, more humans arrived, bringing what Marcus called enrichment items. These included puzzles, which Quinn became obsessed with, books about Earth's history, which Krellvox read with fascination, and a handheld gaming device which Jara pretended not to enjoy but absolutely did. "You're keeping us comfortable," Krellvox observed to Marcus, "like valuable animals in a preserve." "Nah," Marcus corrected, "like guests who had a rough time and need some help. There's a difference. Animals in a preserve don't get to choose whether to stay. You folks can leave whenever you want. We're just making sure you don't die of exposure or starvation while we sort out the bureaucratic mess of getting your ship cleared for takeoff. And if we chose to leave now, to walk out," Marcus shrugged, "I'd give you a map, a compass that actually works here, some food for the journey, and my sincere hope that you make it to the ranger station okay. But I'd also remind you that you've been lost in these woods for days, and the territory between here and civilization includes a river you'd have to cross, a mountain pass that's tricky even for experienced hikers, and about 40 miles of forest where at least 3 bears live. Your call." It was not actually their call, and everyone knew it, but the illusion of choice was appreciated. The Galactic Oversight Committee finally cleared their ship on day 6, the paperwork apparently requiring multiple levels of approval and a formal apology from the Vraxian Confederacy. When the humans announced that extraction was arranged, the Crimson Talons felt a strange mixture of relief and something that might have been disappointment. "We have prepared departure gifts," Jen announced, arriving with several packages. "Trail mix for the journey, a first aid kit with instructions in your language, and a comprehensive guide to Earth's ecosystem, so this doesn't happen again. Also, Marcus made you cookies." "Cookies?" Jara asked. "Small baked items of sweetness and comfort," Marcus explained, looking genuinely pleased with himself. "They're chocolate chip. Well, a chocolate substitute since we weren't sure how you'd process actual chocolate. But they're good." They were in fact good. The Crimson Talons sat on the forest floor, eating cookies and feeling the full weight of their humbling experience settle over them like a particularly honest blanket. "We came here to prove our dominance," Krellvox said quietly, "to hunt and demonstrate our superiority." "How'd that work out?" Carlos asked, not unkindly. "We were lost within hours, defeated by small mammals, and ultimately fed from above by the species we intended to hunt." Krellvox looked up at the tree kitchen system, still standing as a monument to human practicality and alien hubris. "It is perhaps the most thorough defeat we have ever experienced." Or, Marcus suggested, "It's a learning experience. Earth's tough. Our ecosystem doesn't care about your reputation or your tech. But humans, we've learned to work with it, adapt to it, and help each other survive it. That's not weakness. That's just how we do things." The extraction ship arrived at noon, its pilot barely suppressing laughter at the elaborate tree kitchen system. As the Crimson Talons prepared to board, they turned back to their human rescuers one final time. "We thank you," Krellvox said formally, "for your assistance during our period of temporary geographical uncertainty." "You're welcome," Jen replied with a grin. "And hey, if you ever come back, maybe radio ahead. We'll set you up with an actual guide." "We will not be returning," Jara declared firmly. "That's what the last group said," Carlos noted. "They came back 6 months later for what they called a rematch with proper preparation, We had to rescue them from a family of raccoons. As their ship lifted off, the Crimson Talons watched the forest shrink below them, the tree kitchen visible until the very end. They flew in silence for several minutes before Quinn finally spoke. "We will not be mentioning the tree kitchen in our official report." "Agreed," said Jara. "Absolutely not," confirmed Krelvox. "But they would remember it. They would remember the humans who climbed trees with casual efficiency, who built elaborate feeding stations, who delivered meals with punctual care, and who treated lost alien hunters not as threats or trophies but as people who needed help. They would remember being fed from above by a species they had underestimated, and they would remember the lesson hidden in that kindness. Earth's most dangerous trait was not its wildlife, its ecosystem, or its unpredictable weather. It was humanity's persistent, practical, thoroughly inconvenient compassion, delivered with a smile and a clipboard and a complete refusal to let anyone die of stubbornness in their forest. The Crimson Talons updated their files on Earth with a new designation, approach with extreme caution, and possibly a pre-packed lunch. Somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, Marcus dismantled the tree kitchen system, carefully coiling rope and packing away platforms. He hummed as he worked, already planning improvements for the next inevitable rescue. Because there would be a next time, there was always a next time. The galaxy's hunters would keep coming, and humanity would keep building tree kitchens, and the irony would never stop being hilarious.